on, everybody? I'm Jason and you're watching Tennessee Mountain Homestead. Today we're back out in the shop for part 2 of Colt's 111-820 swap. Since last episode, we've had to take the transmission out of Jace's Murray, as you saw, and because we're gonna put that one in the 111 and we're gonna put this 6-speed in Colt's. So over the last week, after work at night and stuff, I've managed to clean all the grease out of this case, all these gear sets, just wiped them down, and the differential is 100% clean. I've got all these gears and all the parts I'm gonna be welding on 100% degreased. So we're gonna go ahead and do that next. I'm not gonna film every bit of it, but I am gonna show some highlights. See you in a minute. All right, so I'm starting to weld between the gear teeth, and I think I found a nice setting on my machine, at least. It's the 1/8 inch. So I've got a number 5 on the voltage and just under 36 on the feed speed. And it gives me plenty of time to start to fill in, and I can see it through the helmet fusing nicely, and it doesn't go too fast and too aggressive. So what I'm gonna do is let this thing cool off a second. I don't want it to get too raging hot, and I'm going to fill in completely around each side of it where the gear teeth from the spider gears don't sit, because that's where I'm going to weld my 1/2 inch rod to. Another thing, if you guys are trying to weld up your differential gears and it's having a lot of spatter, you're having a real hard time, what you need to do is make sure they are 100% degreased. I did take a lot of time, and I cleaned these several times with Super Clean, actually, and brake parts cleaner. And I even took a torch a little while ago and I heated it up. You don't want it to be cherry red, you don't want it to be anywhere near that, but the torch will bring some of the, if anything's impregnated in the steel on the surface, like grease or anything, it'll bring that to the surface and then it'll burn off. And then after you do that, you can go ahead and clean it again. And I've got myself a little wire brush here that I used brake parts cleaner and cleaned the bristles out really good, and it's completely contaminant free. And in between every weld, I go ahead and give it a chance to cool off a little bit, and then brush in between the gears. Get any of that brown, like leftover smoke, if you will, from the welding process off the metal. And that, I have almost zero spatter on this right now. It's just nice and clean, and like I said a couple minutes ago, it's bonding with the steel just nice, and I got plenty of time to sit there and watch the puddle fuse. It's working pretty good on this one. All right, so now, as you can see, I'm welded out halfway around the gear. Because that's where my spider gears are gonna sit, right in those 3 notches. Now what I'm gonna do also is kind of halfway fill in the teeth next to where the spider gear sits. Let me take this out. Brand new parts. So, as you can see, this is gonna sit like that. And the teeth on the sides, you saw the center tooth that sits in that, and that's in that tooth, in between those 2 teeth. And then the side ones, see, they don't go down until it starts to rotate. So I'm gonna fill in about halfway on those side teeth to where they'll just start to touch the weld. But we're not even relying on that kind of a locker style. We're just gonna put that there for extra strength, but we're gonna do the 1/2-inch Duke. Scratching his butt on. He's scratching his butt on the door. So we're gonna use the 1/2-inch dowel method, where I'm gonna bend some 1/2-inch and it's gonna weld to this platform that I just made here. And it's going to butt up against the side of this gear, so that way it can't even try to rotate. And it's been working pretty good so far. So this is the second gear I'm working on now. And as you can see, there is almost no spatter. There's a little piece right there, and that's about it. There's a couple here and there you can see, but it is not spattering because it's perfectly clean. So we're almost done with this one. This one here is sitting over ready to go. See how that one came out. And once we get that one done, we're gonna put the differential back together and then start working the 1/2-inch dowel in. All right, now that the gears are all put back together and welded out, I'm gonna go ahead and heat up this dowel, put a bend in it so it follows kind of the circumference or the radius of the axle gears, and we're gonna bend these out, cut them off, fit them in there, and weld them to the gears in between the pinion teeth. So if you haven't checked out that video, I believe it's the way we locked up Jace's Murray and that 820. You can go back and I did a complete detail of how I did all that, but right now I'm just gonna go ahead and get this done. All right, just in case anyone's wondering, this is what the finished product comes out looking like. It's a piece of 1/2-inch dowel. I cut it off at an angle on the ends, and it fits just like this in here. I'm gonna weld it to the axle gear, and it's gonna be touching the spider gears. So that way there's no chance that they can possibly rotate and progress in any way or move. And I've done, this is my third one I'm doing like this in a similar fashion. And once it's all done, it literally has zero play between the two axles. So that's how I get it done. Like I said, the other video shows the entire process. Just finished welding everything up. This is the last axle gear. If you come in here and take a look, this is what I end up with. So the welds on the inside are what they are. It's hard to get the welder in there, and you got some spatter, but it is fused, and I got it most of the way around, but I really concentrate on the outside. I end up with a really nice valley between the rod and the gear, and I'm able to fill that in, and it fused in there just perfect. So that's plenty of strength, because Like I said before in the past videos, the idea of these pieces of material wedged in between the spider gears is what's going to give it that strength. The fact that they're fused to the gear, it's just one giant chunk of metal now. So I think it's gonna be just fine. It's gonna hold up. We're gonna get this thing put back together, bolt this differential up, get that transmission back together, get it in the Murray so we can get the Murray out of here, and then start swapping the 5-speed into the 111. All right, this thing's locked up tight. Now we're gonna reassemble the transmission real quick. Everything in here has already been gone through. All the bearings, needle bearings have been cleaned out. And then we put some fresh grease in them because the grease was definitely old from sitting. It's been a couple hours later. We had to run to town. We actually got some pulleys for Colt's tractor for the 111 at Tractor Supply. We got a 1-inch engine hub, and we're gonna put the 6-inch pulley on the motor and the 5-inch pulley on the transmission. Now, this thing's all put back together. We just had the cover on it and we function tested it. We spun the input shaft. Everything spins, everything's happy. So next thing we're gonna do is RTV this thing shut, and we're almost there. And once this thing's back together, we're gonna get it back in the Murray, and then we can jump on Colt's 111.
What do they mean, the books?
Got all the bolts back in this thing, just touching the case halves. They're not tight at all. We're gonna let this RTV set up. Now, until I tighten this thing up and put all the parts externally back on it to get it back in the Murray, we literally don't have anything to do because the Murray's taken up the spot where the 111 needs to be on the hoists. So the only thing I can think about is Stefan and I are gonna take a little run up the mountain because we haven't been up there since before Good Evening Ranch. So what do you say about that?
For sure.
Take a ride. Come along with us if you want. made it up here to the top of the mountain. I haven't been up here in several weeks at least, maybe more like a month, but that was pretty cool. The trail's all covered with leaves. It's making it a little bit slippery, so the tractors can peel out all the way through here. Take a look around. All the leaves are coming off the trees. In a couple more weeks, they'll probably be totally bare. And Duke and Daisy followed us up. So anyway, as soon as we got up here, I don't know if you can hear that, but it's starting to rain and it's starting to get dark. It's like 4:30 and it's getting dark out. So we're gonna go ahead, back down the mountain, go tighten up that transmission. Finally got the 6-speed switched into the Murray so that we could have the 5-speed for Colts 111. There was a couple of minor differences we had to do, like the shifter here, the shifter connection that goes to the transmission. I had to grind out about 3/8 of an inch. You can see that because when it goes into 5th and 6th, it was touching the belt. And now it doesn't hit no more. It's close, but it'll self-clearance a little tiny bit if it has to. And I had to also bend the shifter itself that you grab onto up top. I had to bend a little bit out of it so that it would actually align with neutral. It was a little tight, but it's all good now. So we're gonna get this thing down and get the 111 up. Finally got the Murray finished. I just got done test driving it and it works like it should. That thing's good to go. Now, we finally have the 111 back up in the air. And what we're gonna do for the rest of the night is just disassemble this thing. We're gonna take the wheels, the tires off obviously, and we're gonna drop the transmission out. And maybe start taking some measurements and see about getting the old one, the new 5-speed 820 back up in there. And the biggest obstacle that we're looking at right now is the shift linkage and the way it hooks up to the transmission. So it's also raining outside and it's about 8 o'clock. So we're gonna call it tonight and we'll see you guys tomorrow in the morning. All right, I take that back. I do have one more thing to show you before we call it a night. And that is this bracket right here. All this, if you look at that, this is something I put in there a couple of years back when I put this thing together because I had cracked the bearing housing on this side, I believe, trying to get the U-bolts out of the frame. I was banging down on it with a soft hammer and the aluminum split. I ended up brazing with aluminum braze rod, the crack, and then I bedded this thing down. I made these circular pieces here out of steel. All this stuff's just made out of bar stock and welded together. But I made these and I bedded them down on top of the transmission with JB Weld. It's still like that. This thing hasn't been apart since then. That just shows you this is a tough tractor. I cannot believe it still even works. The transmission, the way it's been abused, but it does. It actually sounds really smooth. But anyways, we're gonna take this apart, and once it's apart, this ain't going back on here. We might use these actually to support the 820 because these frame brackets bolt inboard on the 820 and there's still 2 more holes right where this is gonna be. So I might probably going to just make another piece of stiff leg like this that goes down to a piece of flat that will bolt through the transmission on the outer of the transmission to give it extra support. But I wanted to show that to you guys before we take it apart. And now we'll see you tomorrow. There's nowhere to put this. What's up, guys? It's the next morning, and last night, as we said, we took out the transmission and spent about an hour or so trying to collaborate over ideas. We tried to fit it in here and realized that the back bolt on the 820 case sticks out too far and it hits the frame. So we've got a little bit of cutting to do here. And today's goal is to get that transmission mounted in here at least, and then hopefully get the shifter working. So there's gonna be some minor, what do you call it? Issues getting the shifter to fit, because the linkage for the 820 is different than the 801. Obviously, it's in a different spot. So come over here and take a look at it. So this is the 820 right here. This is the 801. And the shifter mechanism, it looks like this. And it goes on this stud, which is the shifter itself. And then there's a linkage that comes in and ties to this ball joint, and it moves it like that. Well, the 820 is a little bit different. First of all, the stud for the shifter on the 820 is 1 3/8 inches over to the right. And the throw is different. So we're gonna have to get this thing in the tractor and fit it up. But first, before that, we need to get this in there. And like I was saying, this bolt here on the back, this little part where it sticks out right here, just that little piece hits the frame on the tractor. So we need to make a cutout and clear for that, get this thing in there. All right, last night, we had the transmission in here, trying to fit it up. And I determined that bolt hits right about here on the frame. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to make my initial clearance with this here hole saw. All right, as you can see, the bit came out right there. That's a lot of steel. I'm gonna try to just hit it with the hole saw, take a bunch of material out with that, and we'll have to finish it off with other means, like maybe Sawzall or a flap disc or something, or a grinder wheel. All right, guys, we finally got it bolted up. There's plenty of clearance back there where I made that window for the bolt. And something else I noticed is we are absolutely gonna be able to reuse these supports, these stiffeners I made here. We'll bolt a piece of flat across the top of the transmission right here where it's meant to be mounted. I'll bolt a couple of tabs to this piece of 5/8 round. And then once it's in place, we'll weld it. That'll give it support out here near the end of the axle. So our next move is to get the shifter linkage working. And if we can get that working, we'll be golden, and then it's all downhill after that. So here's the shifter linkage that we've got to work with. It's a couple ball joints on this shaft, which connects. I know it's gonna be hard to see, I don't have my light, but there's a linkage right here. That ball joint goes in there. And then this needs to go to the shifter stud right here. Problem is, obviously, it's way too long. If I put it in the hole that's there, it hits the frame. So, we figured out last night that the shifter, the stud coming out of the transmission is exactly, you know, within probably a small tolerance, 1 3/8 inches, more over to the right, causing this to hit the frame. So, we've got some mathematics to do here, but it's gonna be test and fit, because I don't know how to do the math. So, the transmissions have different throws also, we noticed. When I turned the 801 or the 814, whatever you want to call it, the stock one that was in here before, when it was in second gear, the shifter here, this linkage, was parallel with the transmission, straight across the front of it. When I put this on the 820 and put it in second gear, it wasn't quite parallel. It was a little bit forward. Third gear is closer to being parallel. So there is a throw difference in this also. The only way we're gonna figure this out is to, what I'm gonna start by doing is cutting 1 3/8 inches out of this. I'm gonna cut it here. We're gonna measure the overall length of it. We'll cut it, and then we'll cut out enough to make it 1 3/8 inches shorter end to end. We're gonna do a couple spot welds. We'll put it back on the transmission, make sure, and then we're gonna try and see if it'll throw. And we know what gear it's in, we can feel the detent. So we'll see if it's anywhere close, and then we'll tweak it from there. All right guys, we came in really close to what I wanted to do. So here's the two pieces. And this is minus the piece that was in between here before. So hopefully that works. And we are now at just shy of 3 15/16, which is close enough. So I'm gonna bevel this down, give it a couple of healthy spot welds, put it in there and see if it'll do what I want it to do. All right, so you see here we put a bevel on it. It's red hot, but if you can see how that works there, now I have a nice valley to weld through, so the weld's not piled up on the surface if I left it flat. But I'm not gonna weld it across yet. We're gonna spot weld it, like I said, a couple on the front and back. So it's strong enough to shift the transmission. We're gonna put it in there and see what's what. So I've got my pieces set up here on the welding table. I got my little fixture jigs going, and we're gonna buzz it in. Well, the good news is it works. The semi-bad news is that the shift quadrant, and I suspected this, does not even come remotely close in the forward gears of matching what's up on the fender. The good news is it works, it lines up with reverse and it lines up with neutral, perfect. But when you put it in first, and fifth gear is where third gear was, up on the fender. So I don't see a way around it. I don't see it being possible to cut this to some kind of a custom length to where it would work. And besides that, if I made this longer, the rod coming from this linkage would not be straight. It would be aiming over here at an angle. And I just think that we're gonna leave this how it is. My solution is gonna be taking the plastic shift quadrant out of here. We'll just remove it, and we will cut a nice piece of sheet metal, something that looks nice, and we'll make our own shift quadrant up on the top. And we'll do it custom. We'll do our best to make it look clean. but that's where we're at. And so now in retrospect, the whole entire debacle of taking the 5-speed out of Jace's Murray and putting the 6-speed in that so we can put the 5-speed in here for it to line up, that's out the window. So, but anyways, Jace got a 6-speed. He wanted the new transmission. He knew it was brand new. So he got that. It worked out for him in his favor. Costed us a whole bunch of more work, but we're here. You could actually hook this up right now, put the wheels and tires back on it, and go for a ride, and it would work. That's reverse, that's neutral, that's fifth, and then, but fifth used to be down here. So, anyway, we're gonna get busy with that. We're gonna put lower the tractor down and get busy on the quadrant. We went out to the shop in our little stash pile of metal, steel and stuff like that. And then Ethan had found this old road sign all bent up, as you can see. It was in the creek. Last time we got a big flood, it washed down here somewhere from who knows where, right? But we're gonna use this aluminum. It's got a good thickness to it, and it's easier to work with than steel. We can shape it and mess with it easier. It'll be lighter weight and it won't rust. So we're gonna cut us a strip out of here. We're gonna find a nice straight part. We're gonna cut a strip, we're gonna polish it up, and then we're gonna cut the shift gate out of it that we need. All right, we got our piece. We're gonna cut it on this side. So what we wanna do, we're gonna keep the reverse and the neutral because that works. And then all we gotta do is make a slot up until 3rd gear because that's where 5th gear is now. So how I'm gonna do this, well, it's actually, that side's gonna be facing up. We're just gonna put this over top of this piece. We're gonna roll it and transpose. All right, so. Duke's over there snoring. Now when we cut that, we'll cut this out. And we don't need that little, we don't need this little jagged edge sticking out. This used to separate neutral from first, but first is now right at the top of that. So we'll just cut that straight. We'll cut it out up to here and then we'll figure out if we can make little detents in it for the rest of the gears. So here's what I got going on so far. As you can see, I traced out the shift quadrant. Now, this is our reverse here. And we're gonna leave this spot here for neutral, because that's what it is, reverse and neutral's here. We're gonna cut that out. Then I'm gonna cut a 1/2 inch channel up here on this side. We're gonna favor this side of the hole because on the tractor, there's a spring that pulls the shift lever inboard. It pulls it to this side of the quadrant. So we want to be able to move the shifter up through here. This will be its travel. And then after we bend this thing in the shape and put it on the tractor, what we're going to do is figure out where it's in first, where it's in second, third, fourth, and fifth. We'll come back in here and we'll do this. We'll make some brass knuckles. These will make little detents, and then spring will pull the handle into each detent, 1 through 5. And hopefully this thing works nice and it'll work good for cold. Alright guys, I got my shift gate. This is the skeleton version of it. Right now the transmission, that's neutral. My plan here is we need to bend it around and form it. My plan right now is to put it in neutral right here. We actually want a little bit of spring tension on it. Want it out here like that. So my plan is I'm going to drill a couple of holes in this. Ultimately we're going to use rivets to fasten this piece of aluminum to the fender, but for right now we're going to drill through with 3/16. We're using 3/16 rivets, and we're going to tap it. We're going to thread some holes into the steel so we can take it on and off, and we're going to screw it down with number 10 fasteners for now. That way it'll be fixed, because I can't hold it here and move the shifter around. It'll be fixed with a couple of bolts, and then we'll use a little bit of heat. I don't know how we're gonna do this yet, but we're gonna bend this thing around. We might, yeah, we'll probably just use the torch and heat it up a little bit, just enough, and we'll bend it around. Hopefully we'll get the shape we're looking for. All right guys, this thing's coming out pretty nice actually. So I've been working it down with screws to hold it, and then we just finished heating it up right here. Stefan was just heating it with a torch right in this area, and I just kept pressure down here, and it formed in, as you can see, basically perfectly. See, there's almost no, once I screw these down, it's gonna come out great. So this thing's almost done. Once it's screwed down, we're gonna measure for we're gonna mark our detents, and then we'll make little notches for the shifter to sit in. All right, so our new shift quadrant is in place. That's neutral, that's reverse. And then what I'm gonna do is go one by one. That's first gear. We're gonna mark the center of the shifter. That's second, fourth, and fifth. It's kind of weird how they get progressively further apart. If you see that. Second to third is a little bit further, fourth's a little bit further, and fifth's a little bit further. So they're definitely not equal in the throw. But that's what we got to work with. So I think I'm just gonna take a file, a round file, and slowly remove material with a file, because if I go at this thing with a drill bit, I run the risk of ruining it, and I only want to do this one time. Pretty tough. Look at that. That's how you get forearms right there.
Why are you filming?
Well, I'll consider this a success. Check it out. There we've got neutral, reverse, falls right into its detent. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, neutral. That's pretty sweet. I think Colt will enjoy that. Now what we're gonna do is take it back off of here. We're probably gonna just go ahead and paint it flat black so it doesn't stick out so much, and we're gonna replace these screws with rivets. All right guys, so I'm gonna replace a rivet for a screw one at a time and just work it up from the bottom to the top. And Stefan is currently taping off the surrounding fender because we're just gonna go ahead and spray this thing in place. I don't wanna run the risk of taking this thing off and having it warp or bend or who knows, right? It's fine where it is. It's already been roughed up with the flap disc, so it'll be just fine. All right, there it is, the finished product. We've got everything masked off. These are all replaced with rivets. Stefan's acetoning it down right now, getting all the pencil marks off and just getting any grease that might be on there. We're gonna shoot it flat black and then we're gonna move on. I'm just gonna drive out some moisture and get it a little bit heated up. That way the paint will adhere better, Tennessee Mountain Homestead fashion. And I almost forgot to mention that this shift gate isn't perfect. And you know what we do around here when things aren't going to be perfect? We paint them flat black. Because remember, a little bit of flat black makes it all go away. And also remember, if we get any runs, you want to wipe it with your finger as soon as possible and then spray right back over it quick. We're going to call that, just like election night, it's called. All right, we're moving right along. Just a couple minutes ago, Stefan and I heated up this brake lever. You can see where it's white right here because all the paint's burnt off. But I heated it up with a torch because it was coming in straight and it was rubbing on the rotor, because this is a much bigger rotor than the 801 had. So I bent an offset in it and now it works good. And plus I needed this to be in place to see where my front supports are gonna go. So we're working on that. And then also in the meantime, Jace, Colt, and Mabel came out because they haven't been in the video lately because everyone's been sick for like a week. And they've been kind of just in the house doing their thing, laying around, watching TV and stuff because they don't feel good. But everyone's feeling much better today. Jason's been feeling better. He's been out here since yesterday. And to help him feel a little bit better, we let him pick some Hot Wheels from the box. Now I've got about 5 totes full of Hot Wheels like this, and I started collecting them back in like 2016, thinking I was gonna get a whole bunch and wait like 20, 30 years and they'd be worth something, but that doesn't fly. They know about all those Hot Wheels up there, and there's a bunch of other toys mixed in, so every once in a while they get a prize from the box. So we're gonna go ahead and start fabbing up the front supports for the transmission. And after that's done, we're gonna start moving on to the pulley swap. All right, so we're over here and I need to make support brackets for the side of the transmission. It's gonna grab these bolt holes here on the case. It needs to go up and tag onto the frame. Now the old one went across from this side of the frame to that side of the frame, and on the 801 there was holes tapped into the top of the transmission. Those aren't there for this one, so we got to do it custom. I've got this bar that I have out in the scrap pile. Not sure how thick it is, looks like about 5/16, but I think we're gonna try to incorporate this stuff. But I can't come straight out and just 90 down because of the shift linkage. So I'm gonna bend a little bit and a little bit more. I'll probably do a 45 and another 45 come down here. And then if I have to, if I think it needs it, I'll put a gusset on this. So let's get started. All right, check it out. So I bent a back-to-back 45 to clear the shifter linkage. Just gonna hold it up, mark the top, and I've already marked it here by the transmission. So we'll get this one cut off, we'll get it bolted, and then we'll move on to the other side. Check it out, our first bracket's done. Being that's 1/4 inch steel or whatever size that is plenty stiff to take what we're doing here. So we got a bolt in the frame and one in the stock case location where supports are supposed to go. So now we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. Only that side does not need to have that twin 45. It can just go up and do a straight 90. All right, so the brackets for the front are done. Come in here, you can see this one here. It goes behind the brake lever, and there's the brake actuating. So like I said before, we had to bend this out in order to clear the rotor and to work correctly. So that's this side, the other side's bolted up. And right now, Stefan is cutting out some stock to go up on top of these outer mounting points on the transmission. He's already got a piece here with 2 bolts going through, and I'm gonna make some tabs right here, put a bolt back in it, and then I'll weld those tabs to the top of this. And then we'll be able to reincorporate this support out here so there's not so much axle sticking out. Does it really need all that? Probably not, but since I already did this a couple of years back for the 801, I figured I might as well reuse these, and it works out perfect. It's right over top of it. So we're gonna get that done and we'll be back in a second. So we're making good progress. This support out here, as you can see, I've got it all bolted up, ready to go. I just need to get the welder in here and tack it, take the bolts back out, and then weld it along the entire seam of these tabs. And this is my support bracket right here. Can you see that, Ethan? That's going to support the axle as close to the tire as possible. been a long day, but we got this transmission installed on the 111. It was looking a little bit tough at first, but after we cleared out for that back bolt behind the differential and we got some of these forward brackets made, the biggest part of this whole process and the most intimidating part was the shifter, but we blew right through that. That was easy. Anyways, moving forward, we've got this thing all bolted up, ready to go. It's ready to rock and roll. Only now we need to fit this 5-inch pulley on the transmission. The stock one was a 7-inch. So I've got to actually cut this hub down to make it the same level under the tractor as the stock one, so the belt lines up. We got that coming, and we're gonna put this 6-inch pulley on the front. I would do a 7, I can't because of the way it is under there. It's just not gonna work. It gets into the axle support and stuff. The biggest I can fit is a 6, and that might be stretching it. I might have to go to a 5.5. I haven't got there yet. Well, that being said, that's gonna do it for this video. I know it was another kind of random video. That's just the way it goes around here sometimes. We took you guys along with what it takes to do what we do and make these mowers run and modify them to be super cool. So anyways, also, if you're new to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you please like, comment, subscribe. And as always, I'm Jason.
I'm Stefan.
I'm Jace.
This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and we'll see you on the next one.